Hi, and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. Last week, we dove into a very difficult text in the book of Exodus, and we looked at Exodus chapter 4, verses 18 through 31. And I said that the first step to us being able to crack the code of this difficult circumcision incident in the middle of this passage is to see the unity of the wider passage. So today, we're going to take our first step into a more detailed look at this passage with just looking at verse 18. I realized as I was looking at this today that I don't think I've ever talked to you about Jethro. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on Jethro, and then we're going to look at, what's going on in this verse. So I'm just going to read it quickly from the NIV first. Then Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, "Let me return to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive." And Jethro said, "Go, and I wish you well." So we haven't talked about Jethro yet. This is not the first time he's been mentioned, but there's this tricky issue going on in that he seems to go by multiple names. So I'll run through these names really quickly, and you'll see what I mean. In chapter 2, verse 18, when Moses first shows up in Midian, he sits down by a well and he rescues these women who are being bullied by other shepherds, and he ends up marrying one of them. And it's the daughter of Reuel. So 2:18 refers to Reuel, their father, the priest of Midian. And then Moses marries Zipporah, Reuel's daughter. So it's very clear that Reuel is Moses' father-in-law. But then in chapter 3, verse 1, Moses gets a job working for Jethro, who is also called his father-in-law, priest of Midian. So is it Reuel or is it Jethro? What's going on here? Then in chapter 4, verse 18, where we are today, Moses takes leave of Jethro, his father-in-law, but the name is actually spelled slightly differently in Hebrew. So in chapter 3, verse 1, it was Yithro, and now it's Yeter. So same consonants, different vowels. What's going on here? In chapter 18, verse 1, he's going to meet Jethro again. They're going to encounter each other in the wilderness before getting to Sinai. And there he's called Yithro again, and he's also referred to as Moses' father-in-law. So we've got Reuel, Jethro spelled two different ways. And then to complicate matters, Numbers 10:29 refers to Hobab, son of Reuel, the Midianite, the father-in-law of Moses. Now, is Hobab the father-in-law or is Reuel the father-in-law? You could say, well, it's referring to another son of Reuel that would make this Moses' brother-in-law. If it's another son of Reuel the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law. However, Judges 4 verse 11 refers to Hobab as the father-in-law of Moses. So now we have three names for this guy. What do we do? Well, there are three possible approaches to this that might explain what's going on. The first common approach is to chalk this up to different sources. So many scholars would explain that that various sources were combined to create the Pentateuch or Torah that we now have. And so one source refers to Moses' father-in-law as Reuel and another as Jethro. Traditionally, it's Reuel is from the J source and Jethro is from the E source. That's one way of looking at it. And I don't dispute the idea that there would be multiple sources combined here, but I don't think that fully explains why we have two different names. So Nahum Sarna gives us another possibility. He says that Jethro may be a title rather than a name, and it might be a way of referring to him as like his excellency. So perhaps Reuel is his name, Jethro is his title. That's why they're used interchangeably. I have another possibility that I want to float, and it could be that the actual solution could be a combination of the three of these. But the other possibility is that the word that we're translating father-in-law is actually a less precise term than our English word father-in-law. So in Hebrew, the word chatan means to become related by marriage. And the noun form of that word is choten. It's usually translated father-in-law, but since to become related by marriage is broader than just to become a father-in-law, it's possible that a choten could refer to any male relative related by marriage. So a brother-in-law, an uncle-in-law, a father-in-law, maybe those are all grouped together under the one term. So this is a more anthropological perspective. suggesting that our way of thinking about family relations doesn't map over exactly onto ancient Hebrew and Midianite ways of thinking about family relations. So I'm not entirely sure whether these are two people or one person with a title and a name. You can decide what you think is most likely. Just a quick look now at the content of chapter 4, verse 18, which is what this video is supposed to be about. So Moses comes to take leave of Jethro, and just 4 things I want to point out about this. Number 1, Moses does not tell Jethro the whole story. Yahweh has commissioned him to go and rescue the people from Israel, but Moses doesn't say that. He says, let me return to my own people to see if they're still alive. So is this motivated by modesty? Does he not want to brag about this big job he's been given? Is he afraid that he'll be laughed at, or that Jethro will prevent him from going or try to talk him out of it? Or is this just good diplomacy? He's not revealing his whole mission because it's not important for Jethro to know the whole mission. We're not really sure, but I just find it interesting that he doesn't tell the whole story. Second, Moses has a clearer sense of his identity here than he did when he arrived in Midian. Notice that he says that he wants to go to his own people or his own brothers. He says he wants to check on his brothers in Hebrew. This reminds us of chapter 2, verse 11, where he goes out to his brothers to see how they're faring under the Egyptian taskmasters. He hasn't been able to fully let go of this idea, so he wants to check on them. I have a whole Torah Tuesday video that explores Moses' identity. It's the one on chapter 2, verses 15 to 22. I encourage you to check that out if you haven't watched it or don't remember it. But we've made progress in identifying Moses. Number 3, Moses is concerned about their well-being, as he should be. When he left Egypt, they were in a grave situation in which they were under oppressive work conditions. And according to Acts chapter 7, verse 30, Moses has been away for 40 years by this point. In Stephen's sermon, Stephen refers to Moses having been in Egypt for 40 years before he runs away to Midian, and then shepherding sheep in Midian for 40 years before he returns. So he's 80 years old by this point, and he's right to be worried about how his family members have fared under Pharaoh's oppressive rule. The 4th thing I want to notice is that in this little scene here, it's just 1 verse long, he is asking a foreign superior for permission to go, and it's granted with peace. So, let me return, or may I go? And Jethro says, go. Now, there are a couple of different terms used for going in Exodus when Moses is going to ask Pharaoh, let my people go. Usually it's the word shalach, and here we have the word halak. So it's not the most common word. It's not the exact same thing that's happening in Egypt, although halak is used on occasion. But I think this is an interesting sort of precursor to Moses' confrontation of Pharaoh. This in microcosm is what Moses is going to do in Egypt, and what we see is a reasonable response. For a foreign employer, related by marriage, in Moses' case, it's a foreign employer related by adoption, but Jethro does not withhold his blessing. He allows Moses and Moses' family to go back to Egypt with his blessing, and that's what we're hoping will happen with Pharaoh. Of course it won't, but we'll get to that in a later video. I hope this has been interesting to you as you dig into the details of Exodus. I'll see you again next week.